Everything that we do, from our customer evaluations to the technology that we build to the roadmaps that we have, everything converges with one thing in mind, and that's to serve you, the customer.
Sharewell provides enterprise power without the cost and complexity.
I've got a system that I can customize with little training.
Never have to write a line of code and never need a developer level resource to touch the tool.
Having this portal and being able to integrate it with our existing SharePoint sites and being able to provide on-demand reports and searches.
Anything that you can conceive of that you need to automate and integrate, you can build.
Within days of receiving the product, it was plugged into our virtual environment.
It's a game changer.
Most of our competition, you'll find out, is built on old legacy technology.
We can get you up and running as quickly as possible, and yet you'll never outgrow us.
Our software and our technology was built on the latest, most innovative technology available today.
Whether you have it on-premise and bring it into our hosted environment, or take it from our hosted environment and bring it on-premise, it doesn't matter.
It's about people at Sharewell. It's in the relationships that we build.
At the end of the meeting, he turned to me and he says, "You guys have got the deal." And I said, "Well, why? What made the difference?" And he says, "It's the way Sharewell treated us."
We don't get it right every time. We listened, we identified the problem, and then we worked through the solution together.
You need to be worried about your legacy. Your legacy is based upon the tools and the people that you employ and how cost effective and what the quality is. So keeping this simple and not expensive and easy to maintain saves you a lot.
Hello, my name is Mark Fay from Sharewell Software. We're a proud sponsor of TFT 2014, bringing great ITSM content to the world. Please enjoy this next presentation.
Good morning, good afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the globe. My name is Ryan Ogilvie, and I am an ITSM practitioner. I just want to welcome you today to TFT14. Thank you for taking the time to spend with me here as we discuss some areas where we can make improvements to the way we deliver services, likely through activities that we're already doing. In this presentation, I want to spark some thought together a little bit on how we can leverage some activities we're doing already in our organization. And I mean, really, the difference between learning and understanding is just that aha moment you get. So if you can do that together or in groups as practitioners, that's really something that's really good. So we'll start the presentation. And my presentation today is entitled, "What the hell is IT doing?" It's a phrase that we've probably, as IT practitioners, we've heard before, that we've said before. It's a phrase that our business, unfortunately, tends to use from time to time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Please feel free to use the hashtag TFT14 or connect with me on various social media outlets like Twitter. It can be reached at my blog, Service Management Journey, and in various other social media outlets. So let's just think about IT for a moment. We're visualize, if you will, it's Monday morning, you're heading into work with all the optimism in the world. You get into the elevator, there's a few senior managers from your business units that are in there. You nod, you hit 27 on the elevator, and the woman looks to the man that's already inside and she says, "Wow, we really had some serious application issues over the weekend." And the man says, "Yeah, what else is new?" At this point, your optimism is fading a little bit. It's when the man says, "I just don't get it. What the hell is IT doing?" Is it really all that bad? I mean, not really. Much like this scenario, we're left to struggle with ways in which we can improve our services. More often, you're finding that organizations are improving in the adoption of ITIL and other best practices. The challenge is that we, as IT, tend to limit our scope in which some of the ways are limiting us from taking service delivery to the next level. So often we hear, we do incident and we do change, yet we always seem to hit the same ceiling with regards to performance and things of that nature. Unfortunately, this is where the frameworks naysayers will chime in or say, see, I told you this ITIL thing or this COVID thing, they just aren't going to work. But all is not lost. Where are we going? Before we know where we're really going, we really need to understand kind of where we are. And this quote's really good. If you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. So you've kind of heard before, without some direction, any road will do. And this is kind of why we end up in the, I like to call it the incident change service request circle. And this is okay. I mean, it's okay to be doing something. I guess there comes a point, where you need to walk before you can run. And you started on that journey, but we need to kind of, look at our way we're servicing our businesses and our customers and take that to the next level. One of the reasons why we plateau is, it could be a mentality thing. IT, needs to really enable our customers, which it supports. Sometimes we get in our own ways of doing that. Very often we overthink things as IT that we, think we need to understand what the business is doing rather than asking them or what their needs really are. We need to think of in terms of the business experience. This is fundamentally where you've heard the term shadow IT or you've seen shadow IT for some organizations. This is where this happens. The business, they're making the money. They're spending it on your services, on IT services, and when we don't meet those particular services, it's quite often where they find their own kind of avenue for their own IT needs. We really need to get out of this rut of thinking like IT. It's us versus them. It doesn't really exist, frankly. I mean, it may seem like it does, and so to some degrees it may look like it does, but in reality, we're providing service to a customer that they need to consume. So we need to make sure that we're developing those relationships with our business, that we continue to nurture those relationships, and then we can take away we provide service to the next level. Quite often IT can be very process centric, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, our customers, they understand process because they do things in a business sense. They do things with a business process. The challenge typically is that they don't typically, frankly understand or really need to understand why our processes are causing them delays or why there's issues with their customer experience as a result of the way that we're delivering services through our own processes. They don't really need to know what incident management, problem management are. They just know that they have a service that isn't working the way that they were expecting it to work. They need some assistance from their IT counterparts to be able to do that. We always seem to look at the same things, and there's an expression, shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic. We know there's an issue, we kind of shuffle things around, we work the incidences, we correct the incidences, and the incidences remain. How we manage that, the expectation that our business needs to have a service available, we need to make sure that we're not just shuffling these deck chairs around over and over and over again to kind of, appease the customer from a business sense. It becomes very easy to look at incidences because they're very visible. Service is not available. They call into the service desk. I can't access my particular application this morning. It's not working. They understand that incurs some sort of work and an incident's created, and people are working to fix those things. But incidents, effectively don't really bring any value. They're an indicator of an issue that we're experiencing with our service. And the value really becomes, apparent when we're able to diagnose and correct these issues from a root cause. Whether that's through problem management or some method within our incident process. However we're working that, at the end of the day, the business just wants to ensure that we've identified issues, we correct the issues, and they don't want to see them ever again. The term ITSM sidekicks. I was recently reading a really good article on the ITSM review by Ron's guest about ITSM superheroes. And that sort of resonated with me a little bit. And I'm thinking, you know, there's lots of service management kind of sidekicks that complement the way that we are able to do incident and change and service request. Now, I've decided to kind of go through three. I've chosen event, knowledge, and reporting. I mean, there are many others, but you know, I know you're thinking immediately. There's like, yeah, this sounds really easy. You know, but how do we make these things happen? Like, we're allocated resources to incident change, and even to some degree problem. But you know, we don't really have, you know, the footprint to do some of these other activities. You know, how can we get to a point where we're allowing these to positively impact the way that we provide service? And what it really comes down to, effectively, is the way that we market what we're doing. IT, more often than not, is not very good at marketing the way that we manage services, provide service. Quite often, we like to kind of be behind the, you know, the Wizard of Oz's screen, where we, you know, we're the magic comes out, but we don't really show how it's all done. So marketing is really important when we want to start be able to engage with our customers or our business. And you know, some rebranding may be required. You know, we may want to talk to event or knowledge or these other activities. But the thing is, when we go to talk to the business about them, or even within IT about them, we've tried them before and they didn't really work out very well. And this is where people say, oh yeah, there's that thing again. We didn't really work very well. I don't really know if I'm going to buy into it so much. This is why the marketing is important. So we don't really want to let the baggage of the past prevent us from moving forward. So we may just need to rebrand the way that we're doing these activities. I mean, think about when you talked about rolling out incident, whether there was really a rollout of incident or not. There probably wasn't much marketing on it because it was a reactionary and not a proactive activity. What we really need to focus on is the proactiveness of these activities. That, you know, if we have knowledge, if we understand when things are happening through events, or if we're able to report on what's going on, you know, we're able to take our services to another level. We'll have a way to measure them and a way to, you know, track the progress that we're making on them by having these activities available. You know, how does this improve your business outcomes? I mean, when it really comes down to it, nothing means anything unless it's helping your business do what it needs to do. So you need to address it in those terms when you're selling it to people. It's about the customer. It's not about IT. It's not about us, you know, the kind of work we're doing. It's about the business and their needs and being able to service them in a way that it's going to allow them to reach their goals and reach their business outcomes. Pain versus pleasure. I mean, put another way, people are really more pain adverse than anything else. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, but if I was to tell someone put their hand on a stove burner and it's off, okay, they would probably think, no, why would I do that? They would have a lot of questions around it because it just seems like a strange request. However, if I told you that the burner was on, you would, you know, immediately tell someone, I'm not doing that. There's no way, because we're pain adverse. We would rather avoid pain at all costs than the potential of maybe getting some sort of benefit through some other activities that we aren't really sure about. So when we want to promote the gains that we want to see, we want to show it in the result of, if we don't do, you know, event management, if we don't do knowledge, or if we don't do reporting, this is how it's going to impact us. This is the pain point it's going to cause us if we don't do these things. If we say, well, if we do event management, here's the 3 things it's going to help us do, and those are all very valid and all very good things. But if we say we don't do reporting, we're not going to be able to show our rate of investment on these activities, and this thing's going to fail immediately. So we really want to kind of tailor the way we market these things based on the, you know, what if we don't do it, rather than maybe necessarily if we do it. And a lot of times that I find that does help. So we're going to move on to one of these particular sidekicks I mentioned. We all know what knowledge is, but we really need to address organizationally, what knowledge is, and also what knowledge is not. I think far too often we get the challenge that we'll find is that we want to do too much, and it becomes very complex and it's daunting, and no one really wants to touch it. But we really need to identify what we're going to do. What does knowledge pertain? What does that really mean? Is it we're talking like a CMS? Is this an internal, system knowledge that we're looking to gather and collect, and understand, or is it knowledge articles for maybe some self-service on a portal of some sort? Do we want to have, our top tips and tricks? This will reduce some, first call resolution. Or business knowledge. I mean, what do we know about our customers, and where do we keep that information? It's I think far often than not, certainly in some organizations they'll have people that have been around a long time. They know the people in the business, and they get to know them fairly well. But we don't capture that information anywhere in any particular way. So when those people move on through the company to something else, or they leave companies and move on to another career somewhere else entirely, that knowledge is entirely lost, and that connection to our business is also lost with them. So we need to make sure that we, have a way to do these, but we need to also make sure that, we understand what we're going to collect, and maybe not everything. Some of the benefits here is that you're having available knowledge. I mean, just imagine having knowledge available to help you make, informed decisions. One of the benefits is, could be incident resolution, both in duration and in volume. Think of it in incident outage time. If I was to take, 10 minutes to look through knowledge records, whether it would be, incidents or changes or documents or whatever we're leveraging, I would be able to make a better informed decision on how to escalate and correct this issue. Instead of, sending it to Group X, as per instructions, I might say this needs to be sent to Group Y. We've already figured this out once. Why reinvent the wheel on a conference call when you can say, here's the first 5 things we need to check before anything else. This is what's worked for us in the past. These are things that we needed to check. You've already spent time diagnosing this before at some point. So, use this information to help you save some time, reduce the incident outage time, and help your business get back on track. Improve business understanding. Just being able to solve issues for your customers at first call is key. Think of a customer experience where you have, you had a dialogue with your customer, and it's just like a one-on-one scenario. Even if you think of your own customer experiences, good and bad, like when you had to call someone for customer service in some way, and you're in a position that your customers, when they're calling, you call the customer help center, and you're sitting there for a while, being passed around from person to person. They don't really know who to help you or who can help you. Just being in a position where if you could call somewhere, the first person that answers is able to give you, a fix or understand your issue right off the bat. Just think of how valuable that would be for you as a customer. For your customers, having a place where they can look at information to help themselves, where they are able, where they and when they can. Sometimes they can't, but when they can't, they know that they're a simple call or a text or a tweet away from assistance, depending on how your help desk or service desk is set up to help your business. Overall, a better customer experience in a place where you can have dialogue with your customers. Just think, we're all just people. I mean, really, that's all it really is. That's all it really boils down to. We want to, excel at whatever activity that we're doing, whether we're in IT or we're in business. We want to be able to, come into work and have a successful day. And when we're able to do that through good, dialogue with people that are supporting us to do that, it's pretty powerful stuff. Obviously, some of the things with knowledge is, we're going to have some challenges. So why aren't we doing this in a formalized way? Someone might ask. Well, there's going to be challenges. Remember the marketing for the buy-in. The concern is that we may be spending the time up front. Well, we have to document this stuff. And I've heard it before. Well, it's just easier for me to fix it than document all these things. Well, why would I bother documenting it? Well, the idea is that you document it up front so that next time you don't have to spend your time, having someone help you fix these things out. You need to, rework it in terms that show the return. The time saved by having this information allows your teams to not do the same old fixes. At some point, if you were able to take these, let's say 10% of your day, add it up over the course of a year, there's a lot of time you're able to, instead of doing the same old fixes all the time, you do something a little bit more innovative for your business, or work with your business, or do something that's a little more game changing or challenging for your own teams, rather than doing the same old fix. So doing these things, it's important to make sure that we have those things there so we can leverage them. Management of information. What do we need versus what we can collect? And this can be a daunting thing, which is why it becomes such a challenge. What do we need versus what do we have? We don't want to collect everything, and you may want to start simple. And sometimes it's just as simple as saying, we have 5 critical services that really impact our business outcomes. Let's focus on those and make sure we know everything we can about those, all the known errors or known defects or known issues or whatever you want to call it, or whatever it might be, making sure that we have those things. Staying current. I mean, it's not just a Ronco grill or something. Set it and forget it. We have to keep on top of these things, and having a way to ensure that the data that you have is current and validated through some kind of review process, or maybe some kind of survey that says this was useful, or some knowledge expiration date. This knowledge is good until a date expert must be reviewed, and it notifies us as such, and we go back and say, yep, this still makes sense, or this isn't really an issue any longer. We need to make those adjustments wherever possible. Warn, write once, read never. That's what that stands for. And I've done it. I've written documents before that I laughed because I'm going to write this thing and then nobody's really going to read it. I read it once a year when I review it and say, okay, yep, nope, it still makes sense. But then I'll send it out to whoever the pertinent groups would be. Well, quite often it's one of these things people may or may not ever read. So we need to consider a way not only to create the knowledge, but to make sure that it really has a way that we're presenting it to people, so it just doesn't sit on a shelf. We have to, again, comes back to marketing a little bit. We want people to read these things, or the components of these things that make sense. But we also need to make sure it's in a place that it's accessible. It can't be locked up for no one to see. So if I save it on my SharePoint site, within my organization, that everyone that needs to see it has free access to see it. If they don't, it becomes worn because no one will ever really truly leverage that information is there. Now, how do we accomplish our goals? I mean, the theme here is always, for me, it's always to keep it simple. Just do it, kind of makes sense. And really go back to your business outcomes. We need to start out with identifying what a critical service is and what those ones are, and we need to start with those ones only. And that may be what we use as a base, and from that base, our success from that particular base, we can use it for future iterations. If Big Daddy Kane was in our position, he might say, IT service management ain't easy, because sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes it can be very difficult, and especially when you feel like you're on Service Management Island and we're not really able to access the business and the rest of IT islands. We need to really make sure that we have a good dialogue with teams within the greater business that we service. We'll move on to a little bit about event management. We are monitoring things in silos. I think you've seen this picture probably in several presentations, or a picture very much like it. We talk about silos. We monitor things in silos, and we need to bring them together to be able to strategize what we're doing effectively. Networks monitors networks, and servers monitor servers. But do they really talk to each other and find out kind of what's happening between the two groups within the organization? We could also talk about the monitoring types. I mean, I won't talk about these in detail. I'll kind of click through them, mainly because you've seen them all before. We're talking about system monitoring or dependency monitoring. Talking about the way things integrate, in third parties, or even the way that our business activities monitor, or recording KPIs. But ultimately, these will do us no good if we don't ultimately talk about how this impacts the business or customer experience. What does a monitor service look like? Really, we have all these services moving, but if one piece isn't moving within the greater service, we're not going to have anything. We're going to have something that looks dead because it's really not working. If the network's out, but all the services are working, our customer experience is such that we have no service. They don't know why we don't have service. And frankly, they don't care, and they shouldn't have to, because that's our particular role in providing that service, is to ensure that there's a vehicle for it to be there and for them to access that service they need. We're going to move on to reporting. And when we're talking about reporting, you'll hear the phrase, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. It does not mean necessarily measure everything. I remember being in high school and sat next to a guy who's probably a CEO somewhere now. But at the time, he was, the guy never did anything. How he managed to get through high school, I was never really sure. He was staring at the ceiling, and I was asking him, if he was awake or if he was asleep, what was he doing? He's like, well, I'm counting dots on the ceiling tile. Well, why would you do that? He's like, well, someone told me I couldn't do it, so here I am counting the dots. So I asked him, well, what happens when you count all the dots in the tile? You didn't count the next tile? He's like, well, I suppose I could do that. I mean, reporting is similar in such a way that there's lots of data we could be collecting. And the key is to understand what we need to collect and what we're going to do with the information that we're gathering. Remember, we don't want to make it overcomplicated. I mean, if this is our service and there's lots of data that we've collected here, this may be very valuable, and it may be more valuable to certain groups than others. But when we're looking at kind of creating a strategy, we really want to start focusing on whether or not this is going to give us some value for what our business needs. Is there something from this set of information that we're going to be able to say, well, let's move on this, and let's move on that, and these following things we'll look at, the next kind of iteration of our service improvement. But at this point, this is a lot of information, and it's hard to kind of discern which stuff to look at. So what you really want to focus on is, some of this, keeping it simple, it's the small moves. You may want to start with outages. You may just want to say, we've got this many outages happen every month, and the average time that the service is out is this. While your CPU is important and the IO is important, your ops team can use that information to translate into something that's valuable. But you need to be able to, in a strategic way, be able to determine which things are you going to go after and how are you going to go after them, and then dial it back from there. What is the customer pain point? If you go to the business and ask them, what's your biggest sore spot right now? They'll say, application Y doesn't work every Monday morning. It's very slow, even worse at quarter ends. You'll go back, you say, yep, sure enough, here's our corollary. We have outages on it, and we have the average duration for these things. It's this. We need to improve on what we're doing. And it doesn't mean we're going to fix everything overnight, but it gives us a kind of a starting point for where we're able to go back and use this information we've collected, or in other cases, not collected because we haven't been reporting very properly on how to improve those particular services. When we're talking about reporting, we want to really think about what our objectives are. What do we need to do? What do we need to find out to do that? And then we can tailor our reports to find that information. Here are our reports. What are our critical success factors? Which KPIs support them? And once we've got that, then we can find a strategy for our improvement. Until we really have valuable information, we're not able to maybe look at that. Winston Churchill has a great quote here. It says, however beautiful the strategy, should occasionally look at the results. All plans are great, But as he puts it, if we don't really keep looking back at these things, we're really doing ourselves a disservice. I can't think of how many times we've done some reporting, and one of the things that pops up is, well, this number isn't very accurate because the way that we reported incidences in the past was, a certain way, and now it doesn't. The value and the way that we're reporting that doesn't make sense. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no bad answer. There's no wrong way to do it. But once you identify something that you need to make a correction on, it's just important to identify it, learn from it, and make some corrections on it. It's as simple as that, really. But when you're able to do that, you're able to, streamline your strategy a bit. In wrapping it up, I'm from Calgary, so the Edmonton Oilers are like our arch nemesis. So the fact that I'm even using this slide picture, it's painful news in itself. But Wayne Gretzky has a great quote here. It says, "You miss 100% of the shots you don't take." So, really, even talking about doing these improvements and starting something, even if it's, we don't have anything formalized at the beginning, it's being able to say we need to do something and then start making those things happen. It really makes a big difference for your business. Talk to the folks that are working in your customer base or your business, because they're going to be able to give you the best sense of what's going on, and they're going to help you determine if your reporting is accurate, how your event management's working, or if your knowledge base is correct. So making those discussions and starting just very simple will allow you to get to a point where you're able to do that. So at this point, I'm gonna ask some questions, see if there's any questions. And I do have one here from Chris that says, yes, about showing, how do you show value for these processes? I guess really what it comes back to, Chris, is that we're aligning with our business outcomes. So if we want to implement, knowledge, for example, and we say, okay, knowledge is something that we have in bits and pieces here and there. We've got a wiki, and we've got a SharePoint site, and we've got group shares, and we've got pieces all over the place. Being able to, from an IT support perspective, put these things in one place where, maybe our frontline staff can access them and then ask the right questions even. It does show value, because let's assume that it takes, that they call into the service desk, say, the service isn't working. And without any kind of information, the service desk will ask, the 10 questions they've templated to ask. They ask them, they get answers what they can, and then they escalate. But if they knew a little bit more about the service itself, if they knew a little bit more about the issues at hand, they may be able to better ask the questions. Or, in some cases, if there's a workaround or if there's some other fix in place, they may be able to instruct the users on how to then correct that issue and or find out better information when they can. A lot of times, by the time we get back to these business units or our customers, sometimes the issue magically goes away, fixed by magic. I don't know if it's a code in many ticketing systems or not, but it should be fixed by magic. But it becomes a challenge when you're trying to do something hours later. If we were to say, when this happens, if we could just check, this, or if we could just check that, we would be so much further ahead to finding out, what is really happening at the site at that particular time. So it becomes invaluable in those terms when you're talking about this, your resolution times, when they're going down as a result of being able to supply a first call resolution. So it really does help. Let's see any other questions. So I just want to thank everybody for spending time this afternoon. You can always connect with me on Twitter. Please feel free to use the hashtag TFT if there are any questions after the fact. Please connect with me and let me know. The big part of the practitioner space is that we connect and we're able to talk to each other about these things and help each other out, find new ways to address business concerns and take ITSM to the next level. Thank you very much.